It starts so subtly that we don't even realize we're doing it. One day, you notice you're adjusting your tone of voice to make someone else comfortable. The next, you're laughing at a joke you found offensive, or agreeing with an opinion you secretly disagree with. We build this invisible armor, piece by piece, thinking it's going to protect us from rejection. We tell ourselves it's just being polite, or that it's easier to just go with the flow. But over time, that armor gets heavy. You start to realize that the shield you built to keep the world from hurting you is actually keeping the world from seeing you. It's an exhausting way to live, constantly editing yourself before you speak, guessing what the room wants from you, and delivering a rehearsed version of who you are. You deserve to step out of that armor. You deserve to breathe without asking for permission first. Think about how early we started building these defenses. Maybe you were just a child when you realized that your natural enthusiasm was too much for the grown-ups around you, so you learned to dim your light. Or maybe you learned that showing sadness made people uncomfortable, so you painted on a permanent smile that eventually became glued to your face. We create these characters, the helper, the overachiever, the quiet one, the one who never needs anything, and we wear them like iron suits. We think, as long as I am wearing this, nobody can get close enough to hurt the real me. But the tragedy of armor is that it doesn't just keep out the bad stuff. It keeps out the good stuff, too. It blocks the warmth of a genuine compliment because you assume they're only praising the mask, not you. It blocks deep connection because you're never fully present. You're standing behind a thick sheet of metal, watching life happen from a safe, lonely distance. You sit at a table with people who love you, yet you feel completely isolated because you know they are talking to the armor, not the person inside it. Think of the sheer physical tiredness that settles into your bones at the end of a day spent pretending. It's the exhaustion of constantly monitoring your posture, your facial expressions, and your words. Did I say too much? Was that weird? Do they think I'm annoying? It is a relentless, internal interrogation. We carry this heavy burden everywhere we go, wondering why we feel so drained, why simple conversations feel like running a marathon. It's because you are carrying the weight of two people, the one you actually are, and the one you think you have to be just to survive the day. We are so afraid that if we unbolt the chest plate and show our true softness, the world will tear us apart. We treat our true thoughts, our unique quirks, and our deepest vulnerabilities like fragile secrets that must be guarded at all costs. But the truth is, living inside armor isn't actually living. It is just surviving. It is a slow, quiet freezing of your personality. You end up trading your joy, your creativity, and your peace just to avoid the possibility of an awkward moment or a disapproving look. Letting go of the armor doesn't mean you have to expose your entire heart to everyone you pass on the street. It just means recognizing that you don't need a shield to be safe anymore. It means allowing your real voice to come through, even if it shakes a little bit. It means letting yourself say, "I don't know," or "I'm hurting," or "this is what I actually think." The real you is not a liability. Your true self is not something you need to protect the world from, nor is it something that needs to be constantly protected from the world. You are allowed to take up space without an apology. You are allowed to have flaws, to change your mind, and to be unfinished. The people who truly belong in your life will love the warmth of your skin, not the coldness of your shield. It is terrifying to take that first piece off, to let the cool air hit a part of you that has been hidden for years. But it is also the exact moment you begin to heal. You deserve to drop the heavy weight. You deserve to be known. We have this deep, human craving to belong. It's wired into us. But somewhere along the way, we confuse belonging with fitting in. Fitting in means assessing a situation and changing who you are to be accepted. True belonging only happens when we present our authentic selves and are received for who we actually are. When you spend your life trying to belong everywhere, you end up belonging nowhere, least of all to yourself. Think about the energy it takes to maintain different versions of yourself for different people. You're one person for your colleagues, another for your family, and another for your old friends. It's like keeping a dozen different plates spinning in the air at the same time. Carl Jung once captured this exact exhaustion when he wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But how can we claim that privilege when we are so busy being who everyone else needs us to be? Think about what actually happens when you try to become a chameleon just to keep the peace. You walk into a room, your radar immediately goes up, and you unconsciously start scanning the environment. What do they value here? What kind of language do they use? Do they like people who are loud and funny, or do they prefer people who are quiet and agreeable? And before you even realize it, you adjust your dial. You mute your true reactions. You swallow your genuine questions. And you adopt a persona that blends perfectly into the wallpaper of that specific moment. You do it at work to avoid being labeled as difficult. You do it at dinner with acquaintances to keep things smooth. You do it during holidays with relatives just to get through the weekend without friction. But have you ever looked closely at the bill that comes after you pull this off? Every single time you twist yourself into a shape that doesn't belong to you, you are abandoning yourself. You are standing right next to someone, nodding along, while a quiet part of you inside is crying out, "Why didn't you defend me? Why did you pretend to agree with that? Why is my real voice always the one that gets sacrificed?" It is a terribly lonely feeling to look around a room full of people who are smiling at you, liking you, and welcoming you, while knowing in your heart that they don't actually see you. They see the custom-made version of you that you manufactured specifically for them. You realize that your acceptance is entirely conditional. It depends entirely on you maintaining the act, keeping the script memorized, and never letting the mask slip. If you dare to show a different angle of your personality, if you express an unexpected interest, or if you simply run out of the energy required to perform, you worry the whole structure will collapse. So you keep spinning those plates faster and faster, terrified of what will happen if even one of them falls to the ground. This constant shifting causes a profound sense of internal fragmentation. When you are a different version of yourself for everyone in your life, you eventually lose track of the baseline. You look in the mirror and genuinely don't know who is looking back at you. You ask yourself, what do I actually like when no one is watching? What are my actual boundaries when I'm not trying to please someone else? The cost of trying to fit into every single space is that you slowly erase your own borders. You become a blur. Healing this fear means accepting a painful but liberating truth. You are not meant for everyone, and everyone is not meant for you. It means realizing that it is far better to be disliked for who you genuinely are than to be loved for someone you are pretending to be. When you stop trying to belong everywhere, a beautiful distillation happens. The spaces that required you to hold your breath just to fit in will naturally begin to fade away. It might feel sad at first, and it will definitely feel quiet. But in that quiet, you finally leave room for the places and the people where you can breathe out completely. You leave room for connections where you don't have to check yourself at the door. Most importantly, you finally give yourself permission to belong to the one person who has been waiting for you all along, yourself. The fear of being yourself isn't usually a loud, dramatic panic. It's a quiet, persistent whisper that says, if they really knew you, they would leave. It's the hesitation before you share a hobby you love, fearing someone will call it boring. It's the way you hide your true ambitions because you're afraid people will think you're arrogant. We stay small because small feels safe. If no one can see us, no one can criticize us. If we don't put our true thoughts out there, no one can reject them. But there is a profound sadness in being loved for a version of yourself that isn't real. It's a lonely kind of safety. You realize that the applause you're getting isn't actually for you. It's for the character you're playing. Healing begins when we realize that the risk of being seen is far less dangerous than the certainty of losing ourselves. Think about how this terror plays out in your everyday life. It is that sudden spike of anxiety when the spotlight lands on you, even in a friendly setting. It is the urge to quickly deflect a compliment, because letting someone truly look at you and appreciate you feels incredibly exposing. When someone looks too closely into your eyes or asks a deeply sincere question about how you are doing, your instinct is to crack a joke, change the subject, or pull back. We treat our inner world like a messy room we have to quickly throw a blanket over before a guest walks in. We think, if I let them see the real me, the parts of me that feel insecure, the parts that don't have it all figured out, the parts that carry old hurts, they will look at me with disappointment. They will see through the illusion. This terror forces us to live life on the sidelines, watching other people participate while we hold ourselves back. You want to speak up in a group discussion because you have a unique perspective, but you freeze, imagining everyone staring at you, judging your words. You want to express your unique taste in music, art, or clothing, but you choose the most ordinary, blending option instead because standing out feels like standing on a ledge. You become a master of camouflage. You learn to speak in neutral tones, to hold opinions that offend no one, and to keep your deepest passions tucked safely away in a drawer. But what is the ka of this writing? The kust is a lingering, heavy ache in your chest. It is the realization that you are living a ghost of a life. You are physically present in the room, but your essence is completely locked away. You might be surrounded by people who care for you, friends who invite you out, and colleagues who respect you. But none of that warmth actually reaches your core. It can't, because you've built a wall between your true self and the world. Every time you hide your authentic reaction, every time you suppress your laughter or choke back your tears because you don't want to be too emotional, you are telling yourself that who you are is fundamentally unacceptable. You become your own harshest judge, policing your every move before anyone else even has a chance to see you. To heal this terror, we have to recognize that being seen is not an all-or-nothing gamble. You don't have to throw open the doors to everyone all at once. You can start by letting just one person see a tiny glimpse of your truth. You can start by sharing a small, honest thought with a trusted friend. You can start by admitting, I'm actually really nervous about this, instead of pretending you have it all under control. When you finally allow yourself to be seen, a strange and beautiful thing happens. You realize the ground beneath your feet doesn't swallow you whole. Some people might walk away, and that is painful, but many others will step closer. They will look at your vulnerability and say, "Me too. I thought I was the only one." By stepping out into the light, you give others permission to do the same. You discover that your true self is not a broken thing to be hidden away in the dark, but a beautiful, messy, living human being who deserves to be known, to be heard, and to be loved out in the open. Most of us are living out a script we didn't actually write. We inherited it from our early years, from the expectations of teachers, mentors, or the community around us. Maybe you were told that you were too loud, so you learned to whisper. Maybe you were told that your sensitivity was a weakness, so you built a cold, unshakable exterior. We take these external critiques and turn them into internal laws. We become the strict guardians of our own prison. When you start to question these rules, it feels incredibly uncomfortable. You might feel like a traitor to your own life, but you aren't breaking any rules. You are just realizing that the rules never belonged to you in the first place. It is entirely permissible to stop mid-sentence, look at the life you are living, and decide that it doesn't fit you anymore. Think about the sheer weight of the lines you have been handed to memorize. From a very young age, we are handed chapters on how we should react to disappointment, what success should look like, and how much space we are allowed to take up in a room. You might have been handed a script that says, "You are the strong one. You don't get to fall apart." Or perhaps your script says, "You are only valuable when you are producing, when you are achieving, when you are making someone else proud." And so, you follow the stage directions perfectly. You hit every cue, you say the lines with the right inflection, and you show up exactly where you are expected to show up. You build a career, a lifestyle, or a manner of speaking that looks beautiful from the outside, but inside, you feel completely empty. You are playing a starring role in a production you never auditioned for, and you are exhausted from trying to hit your marks. Have you ever had that quiet, jarring moment of clarity where you look at your own choices and realize they aren't actually yours? Maybe you are sitting at a specific desk, living in a specific neighborhood, or maintaining a specific type of relationship, and you suddenly ask yourself, who decided this was what I wanted? It is a terrifying realization because it means admitting that you have spent years keeping a promise that someone else made for you. We stay in these roles because the fear of dropping the script feels like stepping off a cliff into the complete unknown. We worry that if we stop playing our assigned character, the people around us will look at us with confusion or anger. They will say, "This isn't who you are," when what they really mean is, "This isn't the version of you that makes my life easy." But living by a script you didn't write is a slow, quiet betrayal of your own existence. Every time you swallow your true preference to fulfill an old expectation, you are telling your own heart that its desires don't matter. You become a background character in your own story. You spend all your creative energy editing your natural edges, smoothing down your unconventional thoughts, and holding back your genuine curiosity, just so the story stays predictable for everyone else. Healing this fear requires an act of immense gentleness and profound courage. It requires you to look at those old, inherited rules and realize they were just drafts written by people who were likely living out their own unexamined scripts. You don't have to carry their anxieties or fulfill their unaccomplished dreams anymore. You can look at the expectations that have governed your life for a decade and say, with deep kindness, "Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but this doesn't belong to me anymore." It is completely allowed to close the book on that old character. It is okay if your voice shakes the first time you speak a line that comes directly from your own heart instead of the page. You are allowed to redesign your days, to change your mind about what makes you happy, and to rewrite the definition of a successful life on your own terms. The moment you decide to put down the script someone else handed you is the exact moment you finally pick up the pen to write your own true life. You deserve to be the author of your own story. To heal this fear, we have to look at where it started, but we must do so with immense gentleness. This fear didn't come out of nowhere. It was a survival strategy. At some point in your past, showing up as your true self led to pain. Maybe a project you poured your heart into was dismissed with a careless comment. Maybe you expressed a deep, vulnerable feeling and were met with blank stares or ridicule. In that moment, your mind made a logical decision. Authenticity equals pain. Hiding equals safety. It's important to honor that younger version of you who figured out how to protect themselves. They did the best they could with what they knew. But you are not in that old environment anymore. The strategies that kept you safe back then are the very things keeping you trapped today. Think about how deeply those early experiences settled into your skin. When you are young, or when you are in a vulnerable position, your environment is your entire world. If that environment tells you that your intensity is too loud, your sensitivity is too fragile, or your genuine interests are strange, you don't think, wow, these people don't understand me. Instead, your mind draws a much more painful conclusion. There is something fundamentally wrong with who I am. To survive that hurt, you build a fortress. You learn to tuck away the parts of yourself that caused a stir, and you only show the parts that get rewarded with a smile, a nod, or a sigh of relief. You become an expert at reading the emotional temperature of a room, adapting before anyone can even ask you to. We carry these old blueprints into our adult lives without realizing it. You might find yourself freezing up today when a colleague asks for your honest opinion in a meeting. Not because the colleague is dangerous, but because your inner world is remembering a time years ago when speaking your mind resulted in being excluded. You might feel a wave of panic when someone asks you what you want to do for dinner, because a younger part of you remembers that having a preference used to lead to conflict or rejection. We treat current situations as if they are past traps. We look at the people in our present lives through the lens of the people who couldn't handle our truth in the past. It is an exhausting way to live, constantly bracing for an impact that may never come, defending yourself against ghosts. It takes so much kindness to sit with these roots. It is easy to feel frustrated with yourself, to ask, why am I still so afraid? Why can't I just speak up? Why do I care so much about what people think? But your fear isn't a defect. It is a memory. It is a protective reflex that worked exactly the way it was supposed to when you needed it most. That armor you wear was forged in the fur of an old hurt. When you look back at that version of yourself who decided it was safer to hide, try not to judge them. Look at them with compassion. They were just trying to navigate a world that felt too big, too critical, or too cold for their soft, authentic heart. Healing doesn't mean pretending those early moments didn't happen, or trying to erase the scars they left behind. Healing means stepping into the present moment and gently telling that anxious, protective part of yourself, we are safe now. The people who couldn't hold space for us back then do not get to dictate who we are today. You have resources now that you didn't have before. You have a voice you can use, and you have the power to walk away from spaces that require you to shrink. You can acknowledge the roots of your fear without letting them grow over your entire future. You can honor the survival strategy that got you here, while softly deciding that you are finally ready to do more than just survive. you deserve to live out in the open. When we try to be perfect, we push away the parts of ourselves that we deem messy, complicated, or inconvenient. We hide our anger, our sadness, our confusion, and our envy. We put on a brave, cheerful face and hope no one looks too closely. But those hidden parts don't just vanish because we ignore them. They sit in the dark, growing heavier. Jung spoke deeply about this internal division, noting, "I would rather be whole than good." Think about that for a second. To be whole means accepting the entire landscape of who you are, the mistakes, the doubts, the unpolished edges, alongside the strengths and the kindness. Healing isn't about fixing yourself until you're flawless. It's about ending the internal war and allowing all the different pieces of your story to finally sit at the same table. Think about how much energy you spend every single day trying to keep your shadow side hidden out of sight. We treat our heavy emotions like embarrassing secrets. If we feel a wave of intense jealousy when a colleague gets a promotion, we immediately judge ourselves and try to crush the feeling. If we feel a deep, burning anger about how someone treated us, we convince ourselves that we are being ungrateful or dramatic. So we stuff it down deep inside. We try so hard to be the person who never complains, the one who is always patient, the one who has everything perfectly put together. But those suppressed emotions don't disappear. They just mutate. They turn into sudden bursts of irritability, a persistent sense of numbness, or a heavy weight in the center of your chest that you can't quite explain. You can't selectively numb your life. When you push away your darkness, you inadvertently numb your capacity for true joy, deep creativity, and genuine connection as well. Imagine how lonely it is for those hidden parts of you to be constantly locked in the basement of your mind. It is like telling a part of your own self, "You are too ugly to be seen. You are too dangerous to be loved." We live in a world that constantly tells us to focus only on the positive, to keep moving forward, and to smile through the discomfort. But a complete human being is not a flat, one-dimensional caricature. You are a vast, complex ecosystem. You have seasons of blooming, and you have seasons of cold winter. You have immense capacity for kindness, but you also have moments of selfishness, pettiness, and deep insecurity. And all of it is completely human. Welcoming the shadow means stopping the frantic effort to pull out every weed in your internal garden. It means sitting down on the ground, looking at the messy, unpolished parts of your heart, and saying, "I see you. You belong here too." It is noticing your anxiety, and instead of fighting it, gently asking it what it needs. It is allowing yourself to feel deeply sad or incredibly angry without immediately rushing to fix it or apologize for it. When you stop fighting your shadow, you realize it isn't a monster designed to destroy your life. It is usually just a collection of wounded, exhausted parts of you that have been neglected for a very long time, crying out for your own attention. True self-discovery happens when you finally stop trying to be a perfect saint and give yourself permission to be a whole human being. You don't need to be flawless to deserve safety and love. You don't have to wait until you have healed every single flaw before you can show up in the world. The freedom you are looking for isn't found in becoming a different person. It is found in finally accepting the person you already are, completely intact, with all the light and all the darkness woven together. When you welcome your shadow, you finally become an ally to yourself. The internal battle stops, the exhaustion lifts, and you can finally stand steady, fully rooted in your own beautiful, complicated truth. You cannot be yourself in the world if you are not safe with yourself first. If your internal monologue is a constant stream of criticism, judgment, and harsh reviews, of course, you're going to be terrified of what other people think. You're already treating yourself like an enemy. Building internal safety means changing the way you talk to yourself when you stumble. It's about noticing when you make a mistake, like missing an important deadline or saying something awkward in a conversation, and choosing to respond with curiosity instead of condemnation. It's creating a steady, solid foundation inside your own mind so that even if the outside world gets shaky or critical, you know you have your own back. You become your own safe harbor. Think about how you treat yourself when things go wrong, when you drop a dish in the kitchen, or when you fumble your words during a presentation. What is the very first thing you say to yourself? For most of us, the voice is brutal. It is a harsh, mocking voice that says, "How could you be so stupid? You always ruin everything. Why can't you just get it right?" We tolerate a level of cruelty from our own minds that we would never, ever accept from a friend, a coworker, or even a stranger on the street. We subject ourselves to a non-stop performance review, grading our every smile, our every word, and our every silence. And then we wonder why we feel so anxious when we step out the front door. We are anxious because we know that if we make a single misstep out there, the person waiting for us inside our own head is going to punish us mercilessly for it. Internal safety means calling a truce with that inner critic. It means realizing that you cannot criticize yourself into a better version of yourself. You cannot shame yourself into healing. When you live in a constant state of internal hostility, your nervous system is always on high alert, waiting for the next blow to fall. To change this, you have to actively practice becoming a safe space for your own heart. It starts in those tiny, quiet moments of failure. The next time you experience rejection, or the next time you feel incredibly overwhelmed, instead of joining in on the attacks against yourself, you pause. You take a deep breath, and you speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you deeply care about who is having a hard day. You say, "This is really hard right now, but I am right here with you. We are going to figure this out together." This shift changes everything. When you know, with absolute certainty, that you will not abandon or berate yourself for being imperfect, the outside world suddenly loses its terrifying power over you. If someone misunderstands you, it hurts, but it doesn't break you, because your internal foundation is solid. If someone rejects you, it is sad, but it isn't catastrophic, because you know you will still be standing by your own side when the dust settles. You stop looking at every person you meet as a potential judge who holds your worth in their hands, because you have already decided that your worth is non-negotiable. Building this safety is a slow, daily rebuilding of trust. It is showing up for yourself over and over again, proving to that anxious part of your mind that you are reliable. It means honoring your own limits, resting when you are tired, and refusing to push yourself past your breaking point just to earn someone else's approval. You begin to create a quiet, unshakable sanctuary within your own skin. It is a place where you are allowed to be tired, allowed to be confused, and allowed to be completely human. When you finally build that internal safety, you realize you no longer have to search the world for a place to hide. You carry your home right inside of you. Healing from this fear doesn't happen in one giant, heroic leap. It happens in the quiet, mundane moments of an ordinary day. It's a practice of small truths. It looks like saying, "I'd actually prefer to stay in tonight," when a friend asks you out, instead of making up an elaborate excuse. It looks like ordering the food you actually want, rather than what everyone else is ordering. It's choosing a clothing style that makes you feel comfortable, even if it's not what's currently trending. Every time you speak a small truth, you send a powerful signal to your own mind that your preferences matter. You are building muscle memory. With each small choice, the fear loses a little bit of its grip, and the space around you begins to clear. Think about how often we bend our reality in tiny, almost invisible ways just to keep things frictionless. Someone asks you what movie you want to watch, and even though you have a strong preference, you say, "Oh, I don't care. Whatever you want is fine." Someone offers you a beverage you dislike, and instead of a simple, polite refusal, you accept it and force yourself to swallow it because you don't want to cause a moment of awkwardness. We tell these tiny, white lies of compliance dozens of times a week. We think they are harmless. We tell ourselves it's just about being easygoing or flexible. But beneath the surface, a dangerous erosion is taking place. Every single time you override your genuine preference to accommodate a moment, you are telling your own heart, "Your desire is too inconvenient to exist. Your truth is a nuisance." The practice of small truths is about reclaiming those tiny territory lines of your identity. It is an acknowledgement that your life is built out of small moments, and if you are dishonest in the small moments, your whole life becomes a fiction. You don't have to start by shouting your deepest, most controversial beliefs from the rooftops. That is too much for an anxious nervous system to handle. Instead, you start with the micro choices of a Tuesday afternoon. When a coworker asks if you have a moment to talk, and you are buried under a mountain of tasks, the small truth looks like saying, I want to give you my full attention, but I can't do that right now. Can we connect tomorrow instead? When a family member asks for a favor that will leave you completely depleted, the small truth looks like saying, I love you, but I don't have the capacity to help with this right now. It feels terrifying the first few times you do it. You will feel a wave of guilt wash over you, and your mind will scream that you are being selfish, difficult, or rude. You might find yourself waiting for the other person to get angry or pull away. But notice what actually happens when you speak a small, gentle truth. Most of the time, the world doesn't end. The other person simply nods, adjusts, and moves on. They aren't broken by your boundary. They actually appreciate knowing exactly where you stand. And even if they do react poorly, you get to experience the incredible sensation of standing on your own 2 feet, knowing you chose honesty over an easy illusion. Every time you practice a small truth, you are putting a brick down for a new foundation. You are training yourself to tolerate the brief discomfort of being honest so that you can enjoy the lasting peace of being authentic. You begin to realize that your preferences, your comfort, and your limits are not things you need to hide or apologize for. They are the very things that define the shape of who you are. By honoring them in the small things, you build the courage to honor them in the big things, in your career, in your deep relationships, and in your long-term dreams. You slowly teach yourself that you are allowed to have a say in how your own life unfolds, one small, honest syllable at a time. As you begin to change and show up more authentically, things will shift, and it won't always feel comfortable. The people around you are used to the old version of you, the one who always said yes, the one who never complained, the one who kept their opinions to themselves. When you start setting boundaries and speaking honestly, there might be pushback. People might ask if you're doing okay or imply that you're being difficult. This is the moment where it's easiest to slide back into the old armor. But resistance is actually a sign of progress. It means you are finally drawing a line between where you end and where others begin. It's a necessary discomfort on the path to freedom. Think about what happens when you alter a dynamic that has been in place for years. It is like changing the choreography of a dance without warning. For a long time, you moved exactly how they expected you to move. You stepped backward when they stepped forward. You softened whenever they got loud. But now, you are standing still. You are saying, I can't carry this responsibility for you anymore. Or, it hurts me when you speak to me that way. When you change your steps, the people around you are going to stumble. They might react with confusion, defensiveness, or even anger. They might say things like, you've changed, or you used to be so easygoing. It is incredibly painful to hear those words because the underlying threat feels like a loss of connection. Your old fear will flare up instantly, whispering that you have made a terrible mistake and that you should immediately apologize and shrink back down to make them comfortable again. We must understand that this resistance from the outside world is rarely malicious. Most of the time, people aren't trying to hurt you. They are just trying to protect the convenience they enjoyed when you were hiding your needs. They loved the version of you that never had a boundary because it meant they never had to compromise. When you start asserting your true self, it forces them to look at their own behavior, and that can make people incredibly uncomfortable. The resistance you meet is simply the friction of two separate realities bumping against each other. It is proof that you are finally occupying your own space instead of living in the margins of theirs. But the hardest resistance you will face won't come from other people. It will come from inside your own chest. It is the overwhelming wave of guilt that hits you the moment you say no. It is the sleepless night spent replaying a conversation, wondering if you were too harsh just because you were honest. This internal resistance is the old survival mechanism trying to pull you back into the safety of the fortress. It is your mind panic button telling you that being authentic is too risky. When this happens, you have to hold your ground with immense gentleness. You have to remind yourself that feeling guilty does not mean you did something wrong. Guilt is often just the emotion we feel when we are breaking an old habit of self-betrayal. Meeting the resistance means learning to sit with the discomfort of being misunderstood. It means realizing that you cannot control how other people interpret your healing. If someone chooses to see your boundaries as selfishness or your honesty as hostility, that is a reflection of their own capacity, not your worth. You cannot budget your truth to fit the emotional budget of someone else. Every time you stay steady through a wave of pushback, you are growing stronger. You are teaching your nervous system that you can survive a moment of friction without completely falling apart. You begin to see that true, meaningful relationships are not built on a foundation of constant agreement. They are built on the ability to survive honesty. The people who truly value you will eventually adjust to the new dance. They will learn to love the person who speaks up just as much as they loved the person who stayed quiet. And for those who can't adjust, their departure is a quiet gift, clearing the way for a life where you no longer have to suppress your own soul just to keep someone else warm. You deserve to stand firm in your truth, even when the wind blows against you. Imagine the relief of no longer having to perform. Imagine walking into a room and not wondering if people like you, but simply wondering if you like them. This is the freedom that waits for you on the other side of fear. You don't have to earn your right to occupy space on this planet. You don't have to prove your worth by being useful, perfect, or agreeable. You are allowed to just exist, exactly as you are in this very moment. Authentic living isn't a destination where you finally have everything figured out. It's a daily decision to stop hiding. You deserve to feel safe in your own skin, to live a life that feels authentic from the inside out, and to finally welcome yourself home. Think about the sheer amount of space that opens up in your mind when you finally stop trying to outrun your own shadow. For so many years, you have been moving at a frantic pace, constantly scanning the horizon, planning your next sentence, and fixing your expressions so that no one would see your exhaustion. You have been treating your life like a problem that needs to be solved, a puzzle where you have to force all the pieces to fit perfectly. But true freedom is the moment you stop running. It is the moment you plant your feet firmly on the ground, take a deep, unfiltered breath, and realize that you don't have to go anywhere else to be whole. You are already there. You are standing in the center of your own life, and for the first time, you aren't trying to escape it. This freedom changes the way you look at every single relationship in your life. When you are no longer terrified of being rejected for who you are, the desperate need to please everyone simply melts away. You stop looking at the people around you as judges who hold your value in their hands. Instead, you look at them as fellow travelers, each carrying their own invisible weights and unwritten scripts. You realize that you don't need a standing ovation from the world to be worthy of love and safety. You just need to look in the mirror at the end of the day and feel a quiet, steady sense of peace, knowing that you did not abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. You begin to experience the beautiful simplicity of connections that are based on truth rather than a shared performance. Imagine how light your shoulders will feel when you finally drop the expectation of being flawless. You are allowed to be a beautiful, unfinished project. You are allowed to have days where you are deeply insecure, days where your voice shakes, and days where you don't have a single answer to the big questions. True safety doesn't mean you never feel afraid again. It means you are no longer afraid of your own fear. It means that when the wave of doubt comes, you can look at it with immense kindness, wrap your arms around yourself, and say, "It is okay to feel this way. I am still safe, and I am still here." You become a sanctuary for your own heart, a place where no feeling is too messy to be felt, and no flaw is too ugly to be forgiven. This is the ultimate healing. It is the quiet, unassuming moment you realize you have finally crossed the border from surviving into actually living. You are fully embodied, fully awake, and fully present.